She never wanted to be there in the first place. Mia, a simple woman with a quiet life, found herself at her company's fancy weekend pool party, surrounded by people who loved showing off. She didn't know how to swim and made no secret of it, but some of her so-called friends thought it was funny. They teased her, called her scared, and laughed every time she stepped back from the pool's edge. Mia smiled politely, hoping they'd get bored and leave her alone. But the jokes didn't stop, they only got worse as the sun dipped lower. The drinks kept flowing, and the laughter turned mean. A group of coworkers, led by the office's loudest bully, Jason, decided to make her face her fear. Without warning, they shoved Mia into the deep end while everyone watched. For a moment, the party went silent. Mia sank under the water, eyes wide, heart pounding. She knew she couldn't swim. Panic bubbled up in her chest. She flailed just enough to look helpless. Some gasped. Others giggled nervously. Nobody jumped in. Nobody cared enough. Mia felt the cold water wrap around her like a secret. Then an idea sparked through the fear. What if she gave them a scare they'd never forget? She let her body go still, just enough to look lifeless, her arms floating. A few people screamed. Jason's smirk vanished. Someone yelled for help. Someone else called the police. In those breathless moments, Mia's fake drowning turned the joke back on them. But what started as a cruel prank was about to spin into something far bigger than any of them could have imagined. The sirens were coming. Secrets were about to spill. And by the time the truth surfaced, Mia wouldn't be the one sinking. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the water as two police cars rolled up beside the pool. Mia stayed limp while a stranger, finally brave enough, pulled her out onto the deck. People hovered around her, whispering in shock. Jason stood frozen, his hands trembling as he tried to explain himself to anyone who would listen. The fun party vibe was gone, replaced by cold fear and hurried excuses. Inside, Mia's mind raced. She could feel the rough concrete under her back and the hush of people pretending they cared. In truth, none of them had lifted a finger until they thought she might be gone for good. She heard one of Jason's friends arguing with an officer, insisting it was just a prank, that Mia was overreacting. But when Mia didn't move, the story shifted. Now they were scared. Now they were sorry. But sorry was too late. What no one knew was that Mia had spent her whole life being the quiet one, the one everyone thought they could push around. Ever since she was a kid, she had kept her head down, kept the peace, and never made a scene. But that day by the pool, she realized something. Sometimes people only understand fear when it's reflected back at them. As paramedics arrived and checked her pulse, Mia peeked through half-closed eyes at Jason's pale face. She wanted him to feel every second of dread she'd felt falling into that cold water. A soft voice asked her name, but she stayed silent. Let them think the worst. Let them squirm. The officers started pulling people aside, asking questions. No one wanted to answer. Little by little, the story began to twist, turning their harmless joke into something much darker. And Mia wasn't about to stop them. Mia stayed on the stretcher while the paramedics checked her breathing and covered her with a blanket. She could hear the whispers, people trying to figure out if she'd done this on purpose or if she was really hurt. She kept her eyes closed, letting their panic grow. She heard Jason's shaky voice telling an officer it was all just fun, that no one meant any harm. But his words sounded empty now, echoing in the night air that smelled like chlorine and spilled drinks behind her closed eyelids. Mia thought about all the small moments that had led her here. The jokes at work about how plain she was, the way Jason always interrupted her during meetings, stealing credit for her ideas, the times she'd been overlooked for promotions because she was too quiet. Mia had swallowed it all for years. convincing herself it was better to keep the peace than fight back. But when they pushed her into that pool, something inside her snapped awake. She opened her eyes just enough to see one of her only true friends at work, Sarah, standing behind. The police line, Sarah's wide eyes met hers. Mia almost smiled. Sarah knew Mia better than anyone she'd know. This was no accident. Sarah stepped forward as if to say something, but stopped when an officer turned her way. Mia felt a spark of courage. She wasn't alone this time. The officers asked Jason to come with them. He protested, voice breaking, but they didn't care. Some of the party guests slipped away quietly, afraid they might be next. Mia listened to the chaos, every word making her feel stronger. For once, they weren't laughing at her. They were terrified of what she might say next. And Mia planned to make every single word count. Sarah stood by the pool's edge, arms crossed tight over her chest as she watched them lift Mia onto a stretcher. She wanted to run over, but the officers kept her back. She caught Jason's eye. For a second, he looked small now. Nothing like the loud, confident man who'd pushed Mia with a laugh and a shove. Sarah remembered how often she'd warned Mia to stand up for herself, to report him, to speak up at meetings. But Mia always said it wasn't worth the trouble. Now the trouble was here, and it had everyone on edge. One of Jason's closest friends, Mark, was pacing behind the police car, muttering to another guy about how they needed to get their stories straight. Sarah heard him say Mia was faking, that she was doing this to ruin them. The thought made her stomach twist. She knew Mia wasn't cruel, but maybe she'd finally learned how to play their game. Meanwhile, the party guests who hadn't fled were grouped near the house, whispering. Some were worried the police would ask for their phones. Others were deleting videos they'd taken earlier, afraid the wrong clip could be used as evidence. What none of them realized was that Sarah had filmed the whole thing too, but she hadn't deleted a thing. She'd seen Jason shove Mia with her own eyes, seen the panic on Mia's face as she hit the water back in the ambulance. Mia's mind was racing. She heard the doors close, heard the paramedics talk about taking her to the hospital for checks. She forced herself to stay still. Her breathing was steady now, but she kept it shallow, just enough to keep up the act. Outside, the police were pulling Jason away in handcuffs, but Mia knew this was far from over. There were still so many secrets floating just below the surface, and she planned to drag every single one into the light. The ambulance doors swung shut, and for a moment, Mia lay in the quiet hum of the vehicle. The paramedic's voice was soft, asking her name again, telling her she'd be okay. Mia opened her eyes just enough to nod, letting them think she was too weak to speak. Inside, her thoughts were sharp and alive. She replayed Jason's face. Over and over how quick his grin had fallen when he realized his joke had turned into a nightmare. Back at the house, Sarah stood her ground. An officer asked her what she'd seen. She pulled out her phone and showed them the clip, Jason laughing, pushing Mia into the pool while people cheered him on. The officer's jaw tightened as he watched. Sarah knew this video would be everything, but she also knew it could drag her into this mess. She felt her hands shaking but forced herself to keep steady. Mia needed her now more than ever. Inside the police car, Jason's mind was spinning. Couldn't believe he was in cuffs for something so harmless. He told himself Mia would wake up, clear this up, forgive him like she always did at work. But this time felt different. The other guys weren't backing him up. Mark was pretending he'd tried to stop it. Everyone was turning on him to save themselves. Jason's anger bubbled under his fear. He thought of Mia's blank face on the pool deck and wondered if she'd planned this all along. The ambulance pulled up to the hospital. Mia stared at the ceiling, letting the bright lights blur her vision. She wasn't sure what would happen next, what Jason would say. Who would lie? Who would break under the truth? But one thing was certain. She wasn't the quiet, simple woman they thought they knew anymore. And when she finally opened her mouth to speak, no one would be ready for what she had to say. Inside the hospital room, Mia lay under the harsh lights, staring at the ceiling tiles. A nurse came and went, checking her vitals and whispering to another staff member about the police outside. Mia stayed quiet, listening more than she spoke. She could hear Sarah's voice in the hallway, trying to convince the officer to let her see Mia. She wanted to tell Sarah everything, but she needed more time. If she spoke too soon, they'd twist her words. She had to be sure. Then her phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was Sarah's name. Mia waited until the nurse stepped out, then reached for it with shaky hands. When she answered, Sarah's voice came through, low but urgent. Mia, you need to know something. They found Jason's old group chat. Mark showed the police to cover himself. There's more. They've done this before. Not just to you. Mia sat up, the heart monitor beeping faster. She whispered, "What do you mean?" Sarah's words tumbled out. There were other women. Office parties, trips. They'd get drunk, pick someone quiet, make them the joke for the night. There's videos, messages, everything. They thought no one would ever say anything. Jason isn't the only one there. All scared now. They're blaming each other. Mia's head spun. The push into the pool wasn't just a stupid prank, it was part of something bigger. She felt her chest tightened, anger mixing with cold resolve. If this was tea,